Brace yourself. A moral lecture. You know, I have a friend who had a child at about 15 years old. That child became pregnant. And the going joke at the time was, haha, grandpa, you know, haha, pappy. We picked on him. And at one point in time, he turned to me and rather flippantly said, I don't give a shit. She destroyed her own life, not mine. And while that statement may be true based on, the reality of the culture we live in, it still struck me as, it's an odd statement. Like, I didn't have kids at the time, but it still struck me as odd. Right? Like, what a weird thing to say against your child, you know? Who am I to judge? But it struck me as odd. It stuck with me for a bit, and I thought about it. And I remember thinking, well, he's got a point, right? He's got a point. It's not a good point, but it's a point. See, back in the old days, if you had a child and that baby girl became pregnant at 15, that meant some things for you. That meant some very serious things for you. That meant that you were probably never going to retire. You were going to work that field out there until the day you die. They'll find you face down with crows pecking at the back of your head. Because as a man, you're not going to saddle your 15-year-old daughter with the raising of your grandchild, because she's a child and that's your family's future right there. Right? So you're never going to retire. Your life is over. You can forget about that. Also, you know that your daughter's probably never going to get married, right? If she doesn't marry the guy that got her pregnant, right? Because no other man in those days was going to sink his life's work into the raising of another man's child when he wants to be raising his own children. He wants to carry on his bloodline, right? So her social value's gone. She's going to live with you probably forever too, right? She'll be the spinster with 30 cats. And that's not good. And then on top of that, there's the social shame. And look, social shame is not a bad thing. I think it's a useful tool. I think it's better than writing laws. Right? I think shame, public shame, is a good thing. It's better than having a law. So, in that one foul stroke, you don't ever retire. Your family has been shamed, and your daughter's future is over. Unless you're willing to do the shotgun wedding thing to the young man, which did happen, because those were the consequences. You'd spare the shame. You'd provide, hopefully, a stable environment for the child to grow up in. But somewhere along the lines, we stopped trying to prevent bad things from happening and decided we give up. We're just going to subsidize those bad things, which leads us to where we are today, right? When a 15-year-old gets pregnant nowadays, the state moseys on in with their tax collector dollars and just starts lavishing the young single mom with the money, right? So there's no downside monetarily to the parents, necessarily even to the daughter in that instance. She gets her, free handout, and the kid gets to skate. The kid who did the impregnating, he gets to skate, and, if he ever gets a job, they'll get some money out of him. Most likely he won't, that caliber of man. But on top of that, you have the social stigma is gone. Now, being a single mom is stunning and brave. And look, I'm not knocking single moms. I'm just, in this specific instance, we've moved to celebrating bad behavior. Not only are we monetarily rewarding it, but we're celebrating it. And that, that's here nor there, but what gets me is we sit back as a country and go, why is this happening? Well, because you're subsidizing it. You're subsidizing it. You're giving people money for doing bad things, and you've removed all social stigma from doing those bad things. You've made it easier and rewarded them for doing it, and you're complaining that it's happening. I don't understand you. I don't. And it's not just the pregnancy thing, or I'm not trying to, like I said, I'm not trying to bash single moms. I think I'm just bashing Americans in general, because men are no better. Men are no better. What kind of a man is it that impregnates a young woman, uses her like a fucking broodmare, like an animal, because she has no self-respect, and he's just all gas pedal, and he can just walk away from his child and call himself a man? No, he doesn't call himself a man. He calls himself a pimp, right? And that's cool. You know why the Earps killed the Clantons back in the day? because of a leveled charge of pimpery from the clans against the Earps. See, that was a big deal. You called a man a pimp back in the day, you're going to get dead quick. You've officially fucked around and you're going to find out. You don't call a man a pimp. A pimp is a weak, slimy scumbag who abuses the weaker, fairer sex. It's highly dishonorable back in the day and worthy of collecting your scalp over it. But now, young men call themselves it and they're proud of it. And again, right back to women, not much better. Not much better. You know, young women have no problem referring to themselves as bitches. And they're proud of it. Look, if I called your great-great-great-grandmother a bitch in public, I'd have the taste slapped right out of my mouth. And if I raised my hand to her in public, the other men in the room would put a stop to that in short order. That'd be a wrap for my ass. Because women back in the day, you know, a lot can be said about misogyny and sexism, this, that, and the other thing. But I go back to, you know, powerful women, like actual powerful women, not strong, independent women. Powerful women, like, say, Abigail Adams, right, the mother of this country. The woman who guided John Adams, gave him the strength and the fortitude to do what needed to be done in the face of what he believed was certain death. That's the power women had. Women had the power, because they were respected, to prick men's consciences. Look at the white feathers in England during World War I. This is a group of women that went around England. If they found young men with all four limbs and no uniform on, they would cover them in white feathers and heckle them as cowards. Now, a lot of these men went off in the woods and committed suicide versus faced the machine guns on the Western Front, but it did motivate men in large portions to go and fight for their country. Now, you may look at that as a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's a bad thing, but I think it's an example of the power women had. In the old days, if you were called a coward by a woman in public, that was a rap for your ass socially, and that was because women had value. They had self-value. They had self-worth. You know? I mean, go back and look at old TV. Just old TV from the 50s. Look at I Love Lucy, right? I love that show. Look at I Love Lucy. Look at the way she dressed, look at the way she carried herself. So elegant, poise, grace, you know, an air of power and self-respect about her. Now, I'm not saying that's the reality of the situation. That's a TV show. But you can see, you know, what real femininity is there, and I think it's impressive. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, this is maybe just a wild rant on my part. I've just been thinking because it's kind of a slow morning here today. But I think, you know, if you want to solve a lot of the problems we have in this country, you need to get back to basics. We have this constant thing where we are replacing what works with what sounds better, and it goes right back to the Garden of Eden. You know, Adam and Eve chilling in the garden. There's God. Hey, God, how's it going, buddy? You know, live forever. Anything you want, it's there. But you know what would be better? That one thing we shouldn't have. This is great, but you know what would be better? That's our downfall. It's been our downfall since the beginning. It could always be better. Yeah, it could always be better. Be careful what you wish for, though, because most of the time when you're striving for what you think is better, it turns out to be much, much worse. Much, much worse. You don't believe me? Look at history. All I'm saying is be careful in your strides forward. Don't tear down the house you're in before the next one is built, right? Simple analogy, like a monkey in a tree. And you see some of these monkeys, they swing in trees. They don't let go of one branch till they have a firm grasp on the next. Not us. And it trickles up. It trickles up. Look at our energy policy, right? With the green energy stuff. The way we've been doing things, cutting our own nuts off with energy production and making us subservient to the most scumbaggery people, the most scumbag people on the planet for our energy when we have more than enough to sustain ourselves. It's equal to jumping out of an airplane and hoping to find a parachute on the way down. No, if you want to get off certain types of energy onto other, you need to first be independent. You need to first have the parachute. You can figure out whether you want to jump out of the plane after. All right, maybe you want to save the plane, maybe you don't. But yeah, I don't know. That's my rant. Happy Thursday. Yeah, happy Thursday.